Lots going on with our schools, including crumbling buildings, I guess.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
Good. Oh, there we go. Double state of mind. There's something like two of them. Welcome in. Nice to have you aboard on this Tuesday evening. We recorded this program yesterday, so if all heck broke loose, we'll catch up to you on Wednesday. Just some production stuff that gets in the way sometimes. How are you? I mean, you got stuff that gets in the way of your life, and then you have to adjust, right? But it gives me a chance to kind of have a longer conversation with a smart guy, Tim Duffy, who runs the School Committee Association around here in this state. And there's a lot going on, and up on the agenda for our conversation this evening is that extension of collective bargaining agreements without a renewal, meaning evergreen contracts, which is a really strange word to use in that conversation. We'll get to that a little bit later, but the pressing thing is this big chunk of change that was announced we needed for school building repair. If you want to know a lot about this issue, you ought to go to WPRI.com and read Dan McGowan's work reflected in this headline. And it's, it's 12 things. I'm not sure, well, that's actually a Providence Journal headline, but I will show you a little stutter step start to the program this evening, but I will show you that headline coming up. Anyway, go to WPRI.com and read Dan McGowan's 12 Things You Need to Know About the School Building Ask. And on that topic, here's Walt Buteau's report on it.
Okay, you ready? Here we go.
The governor's executive order got the ball rolling for a series of meetings around the state to discuss how schools can be repaired if possible and replaced if necessary. The top priority will be solving about $600 million in safety and health issues.
We shouldn't have to have parents worrying when they send their kids to school in the morning about whether or not their kids are safe.
Governor Raimondo emphasized every district has expensive schoolhouse issues, but according to the $4 million report, the biggest cities have the biggest problems. East Providence building deficiencies total more than $137 million. Cranston more than $165 million. Pawtucket more than $176 million. Warwick more than $190 million. And Providence more than $372 million in needed repairs. The plan includes suggestions to potentially consolidate older schools into single new schools in some cases.
It may just be that we have to build anew because we can't put a Band-Aid on it, and that's going to be part of this process.
You're prepared to talk to those parents about that?
Absolutely, and listen to them.
All right, I always rely on Tim for objectivity for the most part. No, I mean, no, you're really smart about this stuff. Welcome. Nice to have you again.
You should talk to my wife about the smart part.
Well, come on. You really get this business, and you'll see both sides of an argument, even though you may be advocating on the school committee side. And oftentimes I think you and I end up agreeing because school committees are supposed to represent the people, and the people are what is the most concerned here, not the political establishment necessarily, although I do believe, present company excluded, and a few jewels that exist from town to town, that school committees we got to revisit how we build them. You probably want to just sidestep that one altogether.
It's a democratic process.
Yes, so. It is. I believe, just so we're not talking about school, I believe that school committees ought to be melded into town councils and chaired by mayors. Or just chaired by mayors, so that there's some connectivity between those two branches of government inside towns.
We've looked at Massachusetts has a model.
Right.
Some of their school
it's a good
districts. Model. New Bedford, for instance, the mayor is Mayor Mitchell is actually the chair of the school committee, and about 25 to almost 30% of the school districts in Massachusetts, the mayor serves as the chair of the school committee.
Right.
Which I think is an ideal model, but the problem in Rhode Island, and I'm sure we're going to get into this. I think I've talked to you a little bit about it before. We have an article to the state constitution, the Home Rule article, Home Rule Charter article. And essentially, you cannot unilaterally, the legislature cannot unilaterally change a form of government at the local level without there having a referendum to approve the change, even if it's a statewide initiative. So if the state said, let's make all the mayors and town council presidents chairs of their respective school committees, that still would have to go through a vote in each and every 39 cities and towns.
Unless you change the Constitution.
Unless you change the Constitution.
Which
right.
is a whole nother conversation to be had here. You know, you talk about Massachusetts, Tim. I really do believe that there are just some really smart things that happen in the Commonwealth that we ought to just duplicate. And it's not just education. Car tax, they do it so much simpler. You know, property tax, Proposition 2.5. Really, and that would fall into the school building thing, because most of the overrides of Proposition 2.5, meaning in Mass you can't, and many of you are watching in Massachusetts, you can't extend the levy of property tax monies coming in past 2.5% unless the people vote to do so. That's generally capital improvements. It's a police station or a fire station or the like. We have a hybrid of that with a 4% cap, but it doesn't include capital expenditures, as I understand it.
And it's there's some wiggle room for emergency sort of situations. You know, in the instance of a ceiling collapsed in a public building or a school building, you can move outside of the 4% cap. That requires the Auditor General to sign off on that. And you can do it through a financial town meeting, but it requires like a supermajority in a financial town meeting situation. But there is a 4% cap. School departments are not allowed to submit budgets that exceed the 4% cap, so there are restrictions on school departments as well as municipalities when it comes to the cap.
Right, so we kind of deviated into some of the wonky stuff there, but the point is that we've got this massive amount of money that we need for school buildings. I don't know. You know, I've read through the entire report. I haven't read it in complete detail, but I really did a hard skim. I think it was worth the investment because it identifies building by building what's needed. Aesthetically, overall, I concur, and it's been that way for a long time, that for the most part, with exceptions in each community maybe, the schools are in terrible shape. Agreed?
Absolutely. I mean, the urban school districts have the worst buildings, have the oldest buildings. And it's been, you know, patch them up. And quite honestly, there's, you know, it's beyond the point of no return. At some point, the investment just becomes, you know, a lost cause. It's a lost investment. So I think that you really need to start addressing new school buildings. The problem is going to be in the financing. How do we finance this? Rhode Island has approximately $400 million in general obligation debt currently, and that's for a whole host of things, all sorts of capital improvements, roads, recreation, parks, buildings, college and university expansion. So there's $400 million currently on the books that's general obligation debt. We have about $540 million total debt, but there are different vehicles for increasing that. But the geo debt is $400 million. We're talking $620 million just to do health and safety, warm environment, safe environment.
This warm, safe, and dry, it's known to be.
That's a 55% increase in geo debt. So that's an enormous amount. The state reimburses.
The geo debt is a state number or a state and municipal number?
Well, the geo debt, the $400 million is just the state number.
State number. Well, there's no doubt that there's going to be some pass-through to the communities.
We pay anywhere from $70 to $80 million in debt service reimbursement annually to school districts and cities and towns.
Here's the thing. Here's what I don't know yet. I don't know whether it's clear we need the work. I'm not sure this number is not inflated. And I'm not sure that this number isn't part of a pattern, a philosophy. I hate to be looking for conspiracy theories, but you know, I don't want to get into the right-wing nut thinking on this whole thing. At the same time, there's some programmatical stuff coming through here, and the warm, safe, and dry thing is a transferable cliche, and labor's involved, and Brookings is always involved, and you know what I mean?
In defense of the report, the state asked, school districts to do a self-report about 4 years ago. And they came up with a $1.9 billion wish list, and that was self-reporting. So that was your facilities manager sitting down with your business manager and the superintendent and saying, all right, well, this elementary school needs this, and So they actually came up with a number of 1.9 billion. The state wasn't comfortable with that, so they hired Jacobs to basically say, all right, what's the real number? And they came up with 2.2 billion.
Right.
So, you know, in one sense, it validated that earlier exercise, which was a self-reporting exercise. Now, how much of it is critical? You'd have to go and analyze each and every school building and the reports out on virtually every school buildings. But clearly, there is some very big flaws in school building construction.
Okay, so
East Providence is really bad.
Here's the thing: East Providence is terrible. That pool sits as a monument to what's wrong with the system. It's been, I don't know how many years it's been out of commission. I want to know what the school committee governance aspect is going to be in this, because it's going to be really, really important. So we'll talk to Tim about that when we come back, because there's a good group of people that are involved in this task force. We'll show them to you. But there ain't much pedestrian input coming on this whole thing. But first, I just want to tell you that if you're looking to sophisticate your financial life, meaning all your stuff, like your accounts, your investments, and everything else that you're concerned with dollars-wise for yourself and for your family, the Card Valet app from Navigant Credit Union is a great get. Just download it. Of course, become a member at Navigant Credit Union online at navigantcu.org. Member NCUA. Simply, I'm telling you, it is not just online banking. It's everything you'd ever want financially, right in the palm of your hand. Card Valet. Right back with you. Stay with us.
Are embarrassing in many instances, and it absolutely is having an effect on the morale and the achievement of our teachers and our students. We didn't get into this challenge quickly. It's going to take us some time to get out of the spot that we're in. I believe that we can do it, but it will require big partnerships and big numbers.
Yeah, well, you know, that's the commissioner talking about the building status. You always hear this. It took a long time for us to get into this hole. It's going to take us a long time to dig out of it. I get that. And I appreciate his diplomacy, because he's not the guy that's going to be authorizing this dough. There's a list. Can we put the list up real quick here? Tim Duffy, by the way, is the executive director of the School Community Association. I don't expect you, unless you got an 84-inch screen, to be able to see all those names. But here's the thing. There's no pedestrian mom and pop representation here. In fact, you have one school board member on behalf of the Rhode Island Association of School Committees, Kinzel Thomas. Other than that, I mean, these are all good people. I have no problem with who they are, but the building trades are represented. The FTA is represented. The NEA is represented. So there's 3 unions that are represented in this situation. Unions aren't bad. You can come off that, Kev, because people are squinting. And you know, my buddy John Hazelwhite Jr. is involved. Great guy. Elizabeth Burke Bryant from the Kids Count. Neil Steinberg, Rhode Island Foundation. Is there any committee that Neil Steinberg has not been asked to be on? Does a guy ever go home at night? I don't know. And then the, administration and elected types. I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned that the bottom up, what we need, building block of consensus does not exist in the task force the governor's put together for what could be a $2.2 billion project. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think that if you could reach out, and I would urge the governor and the committee to reach out to the PTA Association to get some parents involved, to have them, to get some teachers involved that are, working in some of those facilities in the classrooms. I mean, I certainly think the list can be expanded. The big problem, the big concern that I have, and I think that going forward, you really have to take a look at if the state is going to share this burden in terms of general obligation debt with cities and towns, and with the exception of regional school districts, municipalities have title to those school buildings because they're the fiduciary agent that has to go forward in terms of bonding. The debt service that some of these communities have, especially the urban ones, is pretty substantial. And not just debt service general obligation debt, but they have pension debt, they have OPED debt. There's a lot, 60% of, not 60%, half of the municipal private pension systems are in critical status,
right,
which means they're funded at less than 60% of what they should be.
Right.
That's a problem.
The OPEB, by the way, is the medical stuff. So it's what's owed medically. So you've got pension debt, then you've got health insurance debt, and then you've got well, that's
all the post-employment benefits, which is health care.
Right. So and they are alarming numbers, no doubt.
Big numbers. And you're asking some of the more critically impacted communities to take on additional debt. You can't compel them to take on general obligation debt. I mean, again, and the voters may not even approve it. So, I mean, school districts, a school committee will go to a city or town council and say, we'd like to renovate a building, or we need a new building. That goes through a process where the council signs off on it and then goes to Rhode. Rhode makes sure that it complies with its building requirements. Then it goes to the legislature.
Rhode is your State Department of Education.
Then it goes to the state legislature that have to sign off on it, approve a referendum, then it goes to the voters. So in this entire process, you may see at some point, either a town council or at the end of the process, the voters essentially say, we don't want to take on any more debt. We've got enough debt as it is.
Well, yeah, look, these are complicated political matters because, I've seen this even with, better formulas, Proposition 2.5 again in Massachusetts. Older people think they've already done their work. Yeah. And so it's, parents with kids in falling apart school buildings are generally the ones that vote yay on all these expenditures. And so hopefully people see that it's the general economic well-being
as we get closer to that fixed income status,
right?
We may have that same perspective.
You know what? I did my part. But seriously, if you want to build your retirement, you still need an active economy out there that's doing that. Hopefully, everybody's in the same boat. But it's going to be a very complicated approach to this. Because if every community, what do you project happening here? One big state financial issuance over a 10-year period of time?
It has to be somehow, localities have to be involved in some process. Again, you would be increasing the general obligation debt just for schools by 55%. That's 600, adding on 55% to the 400 million that we've got. That would push the number over $1 billion. So it's got to be divided between schools and the state. There are some proposals in there to increase, to do away with the minimum share ratio or increase the minimum share ratio. Every community gets a minimum share of 35%. Now, raise that number regardless of
minimum share. When you do a project,
you get reimbursed.
You get reimbursed 35%.
35%. So
new or remodeled.
New or remodeled. So move that up to 40%. Move the top tier down to 80%, so that some of the less affluent communities are getting close to 100%.
Well, see, this is the whole thing about this state. Every formula is weighted. Every formula is across. Same thing when it comes to state reimbursement. In Massachusetts, again, they've got a level formula for the most part in terms of what a new building renovation, reimbursement is. So the more affluent, if you will, communities are at 35% reimbursement to build a new school building or remodel one, but the less affluent are at 90-95%. In other words, for the most part, they're not paying for it. That's got to get changed. I mean,
well, they'll probably lower that. That's one of the proposals. But again, if you're now Woonsocket or Pawtucket and you're asked to pick up, $20 or $30 million in additional general obligation debt, even though you're getting reimbursed for the majority of it, you may see some of those communities hesitate somewhat because there's a lot of money on the table. And their debt services, local government is looking at an increase in teacher retirement costs, an increase in MERS. When they drop the discount rate a half a point, even though they're spreading it out over an extended period of time, that's going to increase the amount of money that they have to pay in terms of teacher retirement debt.
And then when we come back, we'll talk about the provincial aspect of this. This is right in his wheelhouse, right? How the school committee is having to deal with parents who say, don't close or merge my schools, stay with us.
Well, I understand the state. The big thing is where are we going to get the dollars? That's the biggest thing. Is it going to be
We're going to borrow it? That's what we're going to do.
It's going to be on the backs of the taxpayers. Now, what we've done in Cumberland, or what I've done in Cumberland, is worked with the school superintendent and his business manager and the council. I have to say the council's backed it. We did a $5 million issuance to fix. And what my criteria is safety and health.
All right, let's come on Mayor Bill Murray, who was here last week, talking about his perspective on the school building thing. You'll ratify this, I'm sure. The school committees, they don't. I'm not too endeared to the school committees, but I do feel sorry for them from time to time when really well thought out proposals to merge a school because of changing populations. Look, we're going to be down. We're down 6% in student population, and we'll be down 10% over the next decade. You got to merge some school buildings, and the neighborhood school, and blah blah blah. Parents all of a sudden wake up to the news, don't pay attention to the systemic thing, and until it's like right in front of them, and all of a sudden they come storming down to a school board meeting, standing on their heads saying, "You're screwing us." That's going to happen. Like, it'll be every night on the 11 o'clock news. We will have this kind of thing when the hits the fan, right?
Oh, just look at Warwick. Warwick went to great lengths to justify. They've lost student population. They're no longer the second largest school district in the state. Cranston's gone ahead of them in that regard. Warwick looked to consolidate their middle schools, close a high school, consolidate elementary schools, and the amount of pushback was just so enormous that they had to hire another consultant to come back and basically tell them what they already knew. And parents are still not buying it. And it's part of the problem right now between the union and the school committee is the closing of buildings, the consolidation into a middle school model. All of that's on the table with some of the union issues.
Well, we got all of that to deal with, and there'll be many more shows on this. But real quick, the legislature has an opportunity to take a look at overriding the governor's veto on that evergreen contract thing. Right. Unfortunately, I left about a minute here. This is the contract that, hey, if you can't renew a contract, the terms of the contract exist. The mayors, the school committees are freaking out over this, right? Because it takes away their negotiating power, they say. What's the perspective and what's your projection about the General Assembly?
Well, I hope, that they sustain the governor's veto. Our biggest concern is this is not an impasse resolution because the union can still continue to work to rule, which hurts kids, to try to force the committee back to the table in its terms and conditions. Unless there's a quid pro quo where, and we've offered, protect your wages and your health care benefits. If that's what it takes, then fine. That's the most valuable thing. But the rest of the contract should be management's right to implement. Right. That gives us leverage to negotiate.
Yeah, the translation there, folks, the work to rule, by the way, is we don't do nothing but teach. We check in, we check out, we don't consult, we don't do anything other than
field trips,
all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But what Tim's saying is the nuts and bolts of the finances, yeah, but how many teachers are there and all sorts of other things that are all built into these monster contracts can't be hamstrung.
Can't be hamstrung.
Yeah, I think the school committees and the mayors have the right perspective on that. Keep us up to date, will you?
Absolutely.
This is going to be some ride with this $2.2 billion bill on our heads, and we got to figure it out together. Be right back. Listen, on the school building thing, please pay attention to the details and recognize there's a truth here that we have waited a long time to do the right thing, and we're going to have to do the right thing by our kids, but we've got to do it smart. And if you're somebody who thinks you're smart and you're not on this task force, which means all of you, make some noise. In the meantime, coming up on tomorrow night's program, we'll check into the latest on the Paw Sox hearings, what's developing there, and a whole bunch more. You never know. We'll see you on the radio at 3 until 6 on WPRL. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks. Bye.